This video will cover organizing your writing. So when we start out trying to figure out how to organize our writing, the answer really is it depends. Just like with everything else we've looked at, the genre that you're writing in, be it an essay or an email or a news article, is going to determine how you organize your writing. So we want to think about different genres differently. They all will organize differently. Consider the order of information. What information does a genre start with? What does it go into next? And what does it finally end with? Consider how information is grouped in a different genre. In some genres, you will have a whole bunch of information up front, and then it will get more detailed as it goes on. Other information will be spread out depending on the genre. How deep that information goes will also change. Some genres, like a text message or an email, often are going to have just kind of the bare minimum information that somebody might need. They're not going to get into really, really extreme detail because the genre doesn't call for that. Other genres, however, may have a ton of information. Certain types of report writing may have really extremely detailed information, including charts and data and all the data that was collected on something. So you want to consider what kind of information you need to include and then how you include that information when you're looking at different genres. So some of this is going to require you to look at whatever genre you're writing in to determine how does that genre present information. So I have a few examples here. So let's start with looking at a news article. This is just a snippet of the news article. It was quite a long one, but we can still get a sense of how the information was included just from this. So we see that we start with a title that provides short summary of the content. So you have pretty much what the entire article is about in the title. You've got Chad's ex-president sentenced to life, given temporary reprieve from prison. That pretty much tells you the entire story right there. The first sentence in most news articles do something similar. So if we look at this first sentence, Dakar, Senegal, so it's telling you where this is taking place. Hissène Habré, so this is now the name of the person, which we didn't get from the title. Hissène Habré, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Hissène Habré, the former president of Chad, who was found guilty of crimes against humanity, has been temporarily set free from his prison cell in Senegal. So once again, you're getting an entire summary of the article here. Instead of it starting off with, on Tuesday this happened, and then on Wednesday this happened, the information is organized in a way that all of the information is provided up front. Then if we continue reading, it gets into more detail of the specifics. So you should be able to skim a news article and really get a sense of what the entire article is going to be about just from the beginning. Now, if we look at an example like an essay, we're going to see a different organizational system. And this might be one that you're more familiar with. Starting off with an introduction. So this introduction paragraph has kind of just an intro to the entire topic. Here's what we're going to be talking about. It also will include a thesis. That's the point that's going to be made, or the argument that's going to be made in the essay. Then once you get into the body paragraphs, it develops out the subpoints that support the thesis. So each body paragraph is going to have its own point that still has to do with that thesis. Within those body paragraphs, you're going to have evidence provided to support the point. And then finally, an essay will end with a conclusion that wraps up the topic and the argument. This is a pretty standard the way that essays are going to be organized. So if you are organizing your essays with these different, in this order, with these different parts, you're going to have a well-organized essay. If we look at a narrative, you're going to see a different style. So here, we see that it's jumping right into the story. We don't have an introduction. We don't have a summary of everything that's going to happen like we did in the news article. We have you as the reader being put right into the story. I walked up to a somewhat familiar house alongside my two sisters, Raina and Lily. A numbing sadness ate away at the pit of my stomach as Raina rang the doorbell with anticipation, Lily sporting the same elated composure. We were at our new foster home, and though my sisters were excited for the new environment and change, I was dreading it. So immediately we're put into the story and into experiencing the story. And narratives are written very similarly to fiction. Narratives are a nonfiction creative writing. So you have that starting it right away, and then the information is presented as it happened in a linear way. So whereas the news article starts with the end, here's everything that already happened, the narrative is going to lead you through it like it happened. So you're going to experience it right alongside the story, going from the things that happened early in the story to the things that happened later. Now, because it is a creative genre, some people play around with that, with things like flashbacks or flash forwards, but you are going to see that most of the time in narrative style writing, you are going to go through the events as they happened in a linear way. Additionally, they have a high level of detail and not a whole lot of summarizing. You are actually seeing everything as it's happening. The numbing sadness that ate away at the pit of her stomach, you're feeling that with her. Raina rang the doorbell with anticipation. So instead of summarizing, my family and I, my sisters and I arrived at, or my sisters and I went to a new foster home. That would summarize the whole thing. This entire scene here is playing out all of the small details of that scene. So what you're seeing is each type of genre is presenting information differently. So this is something that you want to pay attention to whenever you are writing in any genre that you're not really familiar with. So that can be a bit confusing because there's not a simple answer here, right? I can't say, hey, you're all going to organize it exactly this way, because some of you may be choosing to write an essay. Some of you may have chosen to write a newspaper article. Some of you may have chosen something completely different. So you are going to have to determine how you're writing this. So what you want to do is you want to look at examples, just like I did with just a couple of examples there. But the more examples you look at, the more you're going to start to see trends. So if you pull up 5 different news articles and you look at what that first paragraph is doing, you're going to get a really clear sense of how maybe that should be written. The other thing that can help with is you can really get a sense of the style of the writing. How much detail is included? What's the tone? What's the formality? Is it informal? Is it formal? Or is it somewhere in between? So when you pull up examples, pay attention to what information is included, the level of detail of information, the order the information is presented, and things like introductions and conclusions and titles. Even though we tend to think of those things specifically to something like an essay, a lot of different genres have some form of an introduction and conclusion. They may just be done differently than an essay. So pay attention to these things and look at some samples, and you'll get a much clearer sense of how you can write your genre that you're choosing to do for this project.